37 new games from 13 different consoles and spanning 37 years of video game history. But I know what you're asking, did I manage to avoid my normal addiction of picking up PlayStation 2 shovelware? Well, if you want to find out, you just have to wait until after these. Hello friends and welcome back, and yes, it's some more video game pickups, and yes, there's a lot to get through today, so I'll probably try and speedrun this as fast as I can because I don't want you to be waiting too long to see what new juicy games come into the collection this last, well, let's call it almost 2 months now. But we'll start straight away, as I always do, with the most recent games, so the PlayStation 5, and the first game for the PlayStation 5 coming into the collection is Piece Odyssey. Now this is a game that I've been waiting to pick up for quite a while now, and it's not that I'm a big One Piece fan, though I'm starting to get that way since the introduction of that new TV series. But what One Piece Odyssey is on top of that is a traditional turn-based combat Japanese role-playing game, and due to the fact that I was waiting almost 9 months to get my hands on this, I've already given it a playthrough and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now I'm not going to talk too much about it because it probably deserves a video in its own right, and being a turn-based JRPG, well, you know I'm going to probably talk about this from now on anyway. So without further ado, that's One Piece Odyssey for the PlayStation 5 coming into the collection, where it will stay forever and it will be played on a fairly regular basis, but you just wait for more gameplay footage and more thoughts on this in later videos. Next up, and still for the PlayStation 5, we have Company of Heroes 3, and anyone who knows the series knows that this is an RTS, a real-time strategy game that is probably best played on a PC, and that's where I saw this particular game being played first. The wonderful Heaps of Games covered this as soon as he got it for the PC, but the second it came out for consoles I had no option but to pick this up. Now I haven't had the opportunity to even put this into the system yet, so I can't really talk too much about it, but as I said, I've got plenty of games to get through and I'm going to get through them as fast as possible. But that's Company of Heroes 3 into the collection, where it will stay forever. Next up, and still for the PlayStation 5, we have Hogwarts Legacy. Now I'm definitely not going to talk too much about this particular game because I'm going to be talking about it fairly soon. Now I'm not saying I'm going to be doing a standalone specific video on this game itself, but all I'll hint at is that this is one of the best games I've played this year so far, so it will most definitely make it into an upcoming video towards the end of the year. But that's Hogwarts Legacy into the collection, where it will stay forevermore, and I'm quite happy about that. And next up for the PlayStation 5, we have Assassin's Creed Mirage. Now anyone who's a fan of the Assassin's Creed games, especially the earlier games, is absolutely going to love Mirage. It's not quite a return to the Assassin's Creed 2 glory days, but it certainly has more of a classic Assassin's Creed flavour than the last trilogy of Origins, Odyssey and Valhalla. So I was absolutely delighted to get my hands on this, play it and keep it in the collection, where it will stay forevermore. So now we're moving away from the PlayStation 5, stepping down a generation, moving over to Nintendo and the Switch, and as many of you out there will already know, I'm having an absolute sort of love affair with the Nintendo Switch at the moment. And the first game that's coming in for me for the Nintendo Switch this month is Void Bastards. Now this is a game that I know absolutely nothing about. It is one I would probably never pick up, but this was the better half that picked us up for one reason and one reason alone, and that was probably to hear me have to say Void Bastards on the channel. So there we go, Void Bastards coming into the collection. I will give it a go. If you know anything about this game and think I should play it, obviously drop that down into the comments, but it's into the collection now, so I will be able to play it if you ask me to play it. Next up is still with the Nintendo Switch, is a game that I already have in the collection. I have it for the PlayStation 3, I have it digitally for the PlayStation 4, which of course you can play on the PlayStation 5, so it meant I needed to have it on the Switch as well, and that is this here, Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch. Now this game is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of my all-time favourite games of all time, and considering the list of other games on that list, that just speaks volumes for this wonderful little Studio Ghibli, Bandai Namco, JRPG JRPG, and if you haven't played Wrath of the White Witch, then I recommend you do so, especially if you're a fan of JRPGs, and even if you're just a fan of Studio Ghibli. Artwork's fantastic, the gameplay is wonderful, and the story can be heartbreaking at times. So Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch into the collection again, and of course it's on the Switch now. Next up, and still for the Switch, is a game that I should have got into the collection a long time ago. It's been out for a couple of years now, but I didn't get round to it because, let's face it, I play a lot of JRPGs and they take a lot of time to play. Sometimes it can take me as much as 3 or 4 weeks to get through a game, but this one was a must-have at the beginning, I suppose. But it's here now, and it's Triangle Strategy. Now, Triangle Strategy is a game that I really should have picked up at launch, I just didn't get round to it. And not because I didn't want to pick it up and play it, because I really did. The thing was, it was on the Switch, and back when it was launched, the Switch and me weren't really acquainted at that time. I am, however, now best friends with my Switch, so Triangle Strategy was a must, and it's in the collection, and I'm looking forward to getting round to playing it, but it might be a little while, and you'll probably see why coming up next, because next for the Switch is the Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters. Now, I have been holding off on buying the Pixel Remasters, and mainly because I wanted it on the PlayStation 4, but also I don't want a digital copy of these games, because digital copies can be lost at the drop of a hat, and it's something I've experienced in the past and I don't want to experience it again. So I finally pulled that trigger, bit the bullet, and got the Switch cartridge for the Pixel Remasters. And with a little hindsight, playing these first 6 Final Fantasy games on a Nintendo system probably makes more sense anyway, and also having the opportunity to be able to play Final Fantasy 1 through 6 wherever, whenever, then I truly believe getting yourself this on the Switch is probably the best option. So that's Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters, Final Fantasy 1 through 6 on one glorious cart into the collection, and they're all being played through right at this moment. Now we're moving away from the Switch, we're staying with the same generation and moving on to Sony's PlayStation 4. And the first game for the PS4 coming into the collection this last couple of months is Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus. Now, I didn't buy this game for myself because first person shooters and me don't often get on. Not because I don't like them, not because I don't want to play them, it's just that they tend to give me motion sickness, and there's nothing worse than 20 minutes of gameplay followed by 20 minutes of your head down the toilet pan. But Wolfenstein 2 has made its way into the collection courtesy of my better half, who saw a steelbook she took the fancy to, and she knows I do like a good steelbook. So that's Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus for the PlayStation 4, coming into the collection where it will sit there forevermore. Now, next up, still for the PlayStation 4, we have The 7 Deadly Sins, The Knights of Britannia. Now, I make no bones about it that The 7 Deadly Sins is one of my favourite animes that I've watched over the last couple of years. I didn't, however, know that there was a game for The 7 Deadly Sins until my brother Fresh over at Co-op of Nerds showcased it in one of his pickups. As soon as I saw it, I had to jump straight onto Evil Bay and pick this up because I just had to have it. One of my favourite animes on one of my favourite consoles, who could resist? Well, not me, because as you can see, it's here, it's in the collection. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but I will get round to it. I just hope it doesn't spoil the experience of the anime, but I'm sure it will be absolutely fine. So now we're moving away from PlayStation 4, we're dropping down a generation, and the first PS3 game coming into the collection is Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen. Now, I haven't played the Dragon Dogma games, and I'm not even sure if this is the first one, the second one, a combination of the both, or whatever. But it is a PlayStation 3 game, I'm pretty sure it's some form of RPG, and it's got dragon in the title, and that's just about everything I need from a game to make me pick it up. It's in the collection now. If you want to tell me that I should be playing this or shouldn't be playing this, well, drop that down in the comments as always. But it's here, and I can play it if you so desire. Now, next up, and still with the PlayStation 3, we have another game that I probably wouldn't have bought back in the day, but something caught my eye about it recently, and that is Escape Dead Island. Now, I had no idea, other than the mainline Dead Island games that we see, that there was offshoots. But when I was browsing my local video game store and I saw this sitting on the shelf, something I didn't recognise, and looking at the screenshots at the back show a sort of cel-shaded art style, an art style that not only I love, quite a lot of people love the old cel-shaded art style, but also apparently it's a bit more of a stealth game than it is the frenetic action first-person shooter type game of the original Dead Island. So I'm looking forward to giving Escape Dead Island a chance, and if you think I should do so soon, drop that down in the comments and we'll talk about it down there. Next up, and still for the PlayStation 3, is a game that I've already got in the collection. This is just an upgrade, and we do that from time to time. We have a game in the collection, it may be not in the right condition, it may not be a collector's edition or something like that, and it's Dragon Age Origins Collector's Edition. Now, I absolutely adore Dragon Age Origins. I wasn't too fussed about Dragon Age 2, but Inquisition brought it back into me and I'm looking forward to the next one. But as I said, I've already got Dragon Age Origins in the collection. This is just the Collector's Edition coming in, and I have all the DLC digitally anyway, so it's just a nice box upgrade. You don't need to tell me whether I should play this or not down in the comments, because I know I should play this and I tend to play it at least once every 2 or 3 years. Now we're moving away from the PlayStation 3, staying with the same generation, and Roger Retro Gamer's going to be happy because a green spine's coming into the collection in the form of this Dreamcast Collection. Now, I don't buy a lot of Xbox games, being the Sony pony that I am, and for the most part I will only buy for Xbox games for the Xbox Collection. However, I am a sucker for a good compilation, and not only that, this is a Sega compilation, so when I saw it sitting on the shelves I had no choice but to pick it up, bring it home and see exactly how an Xbox can handle the wonderful software that was on the Dreamcast. Now, I'm sure the Xbox will do a good enough job, but it is a green spine and I probably won't get round to it too quickly unless there's something wonderful about one of the ports in this game, and if there is, then you can let me know, drop that down in the comments. Now, moving away from the main consoles of that generation and onto the handhelds, I have got a couple of handheld games here, the first one being Medieval Resurrection. Now, the first Medieval game was one that I did play back in the day on the Sony PlayStation, but it's not one that I really carried with me fondly. So the reason that this one's making it into the collection is because of the better half again. She saw it sitting on a shelf, she loved the artwork and thought it should be in the collection. And who am I to say no to a game coming into the collection that I don't have to pay for? Well, not me. So that's Medieval Resurrection for the PSP coming into the collection, where it will stay forevermore, and I might get round to playing this at some point too. Now, next up is a PSP game that I did want into the collection. It's a game that I've already got in the collection for multiple systems, and that is the Mega Drive Collection. Now, anyone who knows me knows I do love the Mega Drive. It was a console that dragged me away from the 8-bit microcomputers and onto the console space, and I have a great deal of love and nostalgia for that little black box. But more importantly, included on this particular compilation, as many of you will know, is Phantasy Star 2, 3 and 4. And of course, being on the PSP means I can play those games anywhere I like at any time. And you can't have too many options to be able to play Phantasy Star, so that's the Mega Drive Collection for the PSP, joining the rest of the Mega Drive collections that I have sitting down there, and it's going to live there forever and probably get played more often than some other PSP games that I have. Now, next up, we're moving away from Sony, back onto Nintendo, staying with the handhelds and the DS, and the first game coming into the collection is Henry Hatsworth and the Puzzling Adventure. Now, Henry Hatsworth is a game that I wouldn't have looked twice at. I still wouldn't look twice at if it hadn't been for my good buddy Jay over at Square Pegs, who not only heartily recommends this game, he actually had the opportunity to work on this game back in the day. And because it came with both those selling points, I've not only picked it up, I've also played it for a few hours already. Because Henry Hatsworth is not just a puzzle game, it's a puzzle platform game, or a platform game with puzzle elements that really keeps you on your toes, and it's really hard to describe. I do heartily recommend you picking this up. It's not expensive, it's not hard to get, but it's so much fun. So yes, Jay, thank you for recommending this wonderful little game that you worked on back in the day, and I'm heartily recommending it to you too. So go out there, pick up Henry Hatsworth, give it a play. I think you might quite like it. Now, next up, and still for the DS, is a game that had to come into the collection because it's a Final Fantasy game, and we have Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings. Now, I haven't had the opportunity to play this at the moment, and probably mostly because I've been playing the Pixel Remasters. But if you know me, you know that if a game has Final Fantasy stamped on it anywhere in the game whatsoever, then you know I have to bring it into the collection. It's an addiction. I'm not seeking help for that addiction. I'm just going to continue buying anything that's Final Fantasy related, and I don't care one jot. Now we're moving back onto the consoles and down a generation, and we're moving on to the Dreamcast, because I've finally got a game into the Dreamcast that I've been looking forward to getting in complete. and that is Resident Evil Code Veronica. And the reason I wanted Resident Evil Code Veronica into the collection is this is the last truly great Resident Evil game. Actually, it's the last Resident Evil game if you're an old school fan like I am. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8, other than to me they're not true Resident Evil games. And yes, I've got an absolute cheek because I'll buy any game that's got Final Fantasy stamped on it, but also I'll buy anything that's got Resident Evil stamped on it. This, however, was the last Resident Evil game, or the last true Resident Evil game in my opinion anyway. If you want to argue about it down in the comments, I'm happy to have a chat with you down there. But that's Code Veronica for the Dreamcast coming into the collection, and I'm super happy to have that in there. And next we're moving away from the Sega and onto Nintendo, and it's Resident Evil Code Veronica X. Got it complete in box for the Nintendo GameCube. And the simple reason for buying this was it has the name Resident Evil on it. It's a classic Resident Evil game. It's the last classic Resident Evil game, and it completes my trilogy of the 3 ports of Resident Evil Code Veronica. So there was no doubt that I was going to have to get this into the collection in a complete form, and here it is now, where it will stay forever and sit beside Code Veronica X on the PlayStation 2 and Code Veronica on the Dreamcast. Now we're staying with the same generation, moving on to Sony, and of course the PlayStation 2. And this is the bit you've been waiting for. Have I bought any shovelware? Well, I think I may have bought some shovelware this month, and starting with this wonderful game called Gift. Now, I can't speak too much about this game because I haven't played this game, and I bought it solely for this absolutely awful shovelware box art. And is that a bad reason to buy a game? Well, sometimes maybe not, because you never know what you get when you buy some of these shovelware titles. There might be some redeeming qualities in here, and if you've experienced this game and know of any redeeming qualities, then drop them down into the comments. And likewise, if you think this is a game that should be dropped into the sea, fired into the sun and never played again, then drop that into the comments too. But Gift is in the collection where it's going to stay, and I will get round to play this because I do love to play even bad games on the PlayStation 2. Next up, and still for the PlayStation 2, is another shovelware game, but not just a shovelware game, a licensed game, and licensed from a film that I absolutely adore. And that's Jamanji. Now, I haven't played Jamanji. I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of mini game, maybe based around the board game, but I haven't played it yet. I haven't had time to sit down with it. There's just so many games to play. But it's a game that comes from those wonderful people at Blast. It's going to be not a blast likely, but it's Jamanji. It's PlayStation 2. It's shovelware. It's a licensed game. It ticks all the boxes for me. If you want to speak about this game, then drop that down in the comments. And another possibly shovelware game, another licensed game from another franchise that I like. But I didn't buy this one, and it's Shrek. And as I said, I didn't buy this one. This was the better half again. She is a fan of the Shrek franchise. She saw this game on the shelf, thought she'd buy it for the collection, and I'm happy to have it in there. Ticks all the boxes for me. And if you've played this particular Shrek game, then drop down into the comments with your thoughts on this particular game. Now, next up is a game that I've never played before. I should have played it because I loved the original games back on the PlayStation, and that game is Super Bust-A-Move. Now, the first Bust-A-Move game that I ever played was Bust-A-Move 2 on the PlayStation, and that's a game that I don't have in the collection yet. It's one that I'm desperately trying to get in. Now, I'm not going to go down the route of Evil Bay. I'm going to find that out in the wild or have a trade with someone, because as much as I love and have nostalgia for Bust-A-Move 2, I do like the thrill of the hunt. But Super Bust-A-Move is a game that I never played back in the day because I was on to bigger and better things probably at that time. But again, I just want to draw your attention to the box art in this game, because this is very typical 2000s out there box art, and I just had to have it in the collection. But it's a Bust-A-Move game that I'll be able to play while I'm waiting to find that copy of Bust-A-Move 2 for the PlayStation and get those proper nostalgic feelings back. Next up is another compilation for the PlayStation 2, and it's one I was never going to walk past because it's Taito Legends 2. And of course, this is the era of arcade games that I grew up with, and I love the fact that we can play these games, and not only at home but also to an arcade standard quality, the quality that we would have played back in the day in the arcades. And of course, anyone who knows me knows I like a bit of Space Invaders, and there are a couple of Space Invader games on this particular collection that I'm looking forward to revisiting. Now, it was probably because it was Spooktober last month, but I did pick up a horror game, which is something that I don't do on a regular basis, and I actually picked up more than one, and the first one is Second Sight. Now, I haven't played Second Sight, I never played it back in the day, I haven't had a chance to drop it into the PlayStation 2 and give it a go yet, and I find that kinda strange because reading the blurb at the back, it's exactly the type of game that I would have been playing back in the 2000s, coming off the horror games such as Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and having a touch of games like Galarians in there. This is something that I'm surprised I didn't get round to. It's in the collection now, I'm looking forward to giving it a shot, and if you want to speak about this game, let me know what it's about, whether I should be playing it or not. Again, drop that down in the comments because I love nothing more than hearing from you down there. Now, next up is another PlayStation 2 horror game that I didn't play back in the day and I still haven't played it yet, and that is Extermination. And again, I can't talk too much about it. I do know that a lot of people that I know out there enjoyed this game, think it's a worthwhile playthrough, but do you? And if so, drop that down in the comments, and if you think it's another game that I should just fire into the sun, let me know that too. I'm not going to fire it into the sun, it's into the collection for life now, but Extermination on the PlayStation 2, I'll get round to giving this a go at some point, maybe next Halloween. Now, the next game's still PlayStation 2, but I'm moving away from the horror because it's not exactly my genre of choice, not these days anyway. Maybe more them, their retro rivals, especially Jenn, she loves her horror games, but not for me. The next one, we have this, Dynasty Tactics, and this is exactly my cup of tea. It's a strategy game, it's set in feudal Japan, it ticks just about every box, it would put it up there as a 10 out of 10 game for me. I just haven't had a chance to play this one yet, haven't played it back in the day, haven't had a chance to play it just now, and that's mostly due to Final Fantasy Pixel Remasters and one more game which that's coming up later. But yes, I'm looking forward to getting my teeth into Dynasty Tactics. I'm not a big fan of the other Dynasty games, they're a bit hack and slash, action, fast paced, frenetic for my particular taste anyway, but when you throw in that tactics vibe, then I'm all in, and I'll get round to this fairly soon, so you don't need to tell me whether I should be playing this or not, because I will be playing it and I'll probably be playing it fairly soon. Now, next up, and it's the last for the PlayStation 2, we have Dark Cloud, and it's taken a long time for me to get this back into the collection, and I'm so glad. It's a nice copy, it's an honest copy, it's complete, and it's everything that I was looking for to get this back into the collection. Yes, it's a JRPG, yes, it's got some unusual building mechanics, but I'll not go into too much detail because, as I said, this video is going to go on forever if I talk too much about every game. It's just a game that I had to get back into the collection. I'm so happy it's going to sit up there beside Dark Chronicles, and that completes that sort of subset for me. Dark Cloud into the collection. I'm sure a lot of you are happy to see this in here, and some of you might not even care at all, but I love these games, and video games are very subjective. Just because I love it doesn't mean you will, and vice versa. But Dark Cloud, happy to have it into the collection. So we're staying with Sony, but dropping down a generation to the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, the little grey box that got me away from PC gaming, and the first game that I picked up for it is Alien Trilogy. Now, as a few of you out there might know, I already have Alien Trilogy, but I have it in the Platinum Edition. I wanted a black label, I wanted the same box that I had back in the day, and I can't play this game, and not because I'm not good at it, I used to be okay at it, it's just it's a first person shooter, and I may have mentioned before that first person shooters, especially early ones, and no, I'm not going to call them boomer shooters, well, they give me motion sickness. I don't want 20 minutes of gameplay with 20 minutes of toilet time. It's just as simple as that. I do love the game, the aesthetics of the game. It was really spooky and fast paced and everything that you wanted from an Alien game back in the day. I'm glad to have it in the collection as a black label, and it means I've got a spare platinum copy up there, and if you don't have a platinum copy of Alien Trilogy and you fancy it, draw that down in the comments. Might come to some arrangement. Next up for the PlayStation was a game that I didn't buy for myself, but it's a game that I've been looking for a while. It was the better half again. She saw a game out there in the wild, picked it up because she liked the look of it, and it's Sheepdog and Wolf. Now, Sheepdog and Wolf is a game that I didn't play back in the day, and it's only one that I sort of recently discovered when I started watching YouTube maybe about 3 years ago. It is of course based around the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner universe. There's been some sort of tweaks. I believe we've got Ralph the Wolf rather than Wile E. Coyote in this one, but if you look at the box art you can see that's obviously Wile E. Coyote. Also apparently has all the Acme gizmos and gadgets and traps and the like, and apparently it's a bit of a stealth game because you play as Ralph the Wolf and you have to stay away from the sheepdog, I believe. Haven't played it yet. I'm looking forward to getting into this one. A lot of people out there have a lot of nostalgia for this, and if that's you, drop that down into comments. Let me know what your thoughts on Sheepdog and Wolf are. Now next up is the last one for the PlayStation. It's a game I wanted into the collection, or back into the collection. It's on one of my lists of games that I must have in there, and that is the Ninja Shadow of Darkness. Now this is not the greatest ninja game of all time. It's not even the greatest ninja game on the PlayStation. That probably falls to the Tenchu games. But this was one of the games that I had back in the day when I first had a Sony PlayStation. And as we did back then, the games we played to absolute death because you couldn't afford to buy a new game every week. Now of course it's from those wonderful people who gave us the Tomb Raider games, which was probably one of the reasons I was sucked into it. Not only that, it's a ninja game, and who doesn't like a ninja game? And despite it not being one of the best ninja games, it's still a worthwhile play, and I've got a lot of nostalgia for it. But do you have nostalgia for Ninja Shadow of Darkness? Did you play it back in the day? If so, let me know. And if this wonderful box art is giving you the urge to play it now for the first time, then why don't you try that yourself too? So we're moving away from Sony, we're dropping down a generation, so we're obviously moving away from Sony, and we're moving on to that little black box that took me away from 8-bit microcomputers, and I've picked up World of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck, for the Sega Mega Drive, or the Genesis if you're from across the pond, but we'll forgive you for that because it wasn't your fault that someone over there already had the trademark for Mega Drive. Now this was a game that I didn't play back in the day. The Disney games weren't something that 18-year-old me was that drawn to. As you get older, however, you do get drawn to quality games, and let's face it, when it came to quality games on the Mega Drive and the 16-bit era in general, the Disney games had quality in spades. Now I already have this game in a double pack, but it's nice to have the standalone cart with its own artwork, and it's going to sit lovely in the collection. And again, if this is a game that you played back in the day and absolutely loved, drop that down in the comments. I'd love to talk to you about the games that you played as well as about the games that I played. But World of Illusion in its own cart is sitting in the collection lovely beside the other Disney games that I'm collecting for the Mega Drive at the moment, where it's going to sit just peachy. It's World of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Now we're staying with Sega, dropping down a generation because I have managed to pick up some Master System games, some of the mighty SMS games. And the first one is a box replacement. It's an upgrade because I have this loose, and it's Secret Command. Now of course if you're from North America you won't recognise this game because this game over the pond was Rambo. Unfortunately the rights to use Rambo over here in Europe wasn't something that they had, so they had to throw something else together. Now although it does say Secret Command in the box once you boot up the game, it calls the game Secret Commando, so it's a bit of an oddity, this one, in many respects. It's a shame we didn't get the Rambo name, it would probably have sold more, but I'll be frankly honest with you, this one here is not quite as good as the Rambo and the 8-bit microcomputers, and if you disagree with me, again, down in the comments, you can let me know there. The next Master System game that I picked up that I've been after for a little while is a shmup, a shooter. And now I don't play shooters, I certainly don't play them anymore. I did back in the day, but this is somewhat of a classic for the Sega Master System. And it's Transbot, and yes, it's got that wonderful clip art, box art. I mean, that just screams Sega Master System to me. And the game, I haven't played it yet. I've seen lots of people play it. I've wanted to play it for a while, ever since Ollie over at 8-Bit Boy UK featured this in the Sega Master System Challenge. So I'm looking forward to dropping this into the Master System, giving it a blast, just seeing how good or bad it is. Again, if you want to talk about these games, drop that down in the comments. But Transbot, it's in the collection, and I'm looking forward to giving this one a blast quite soon. And last for the Sega Master System is a game that I've been absolutely dying to get into the collection. It's a game that I played in the arcades back in the day, and it's Shinobi. Now I've played several different ports of Shinobi, and I'll be honest with you, the Sega Master System is one of my favourites. Now don't get me wrong, it's nothing like the arcade game, but it is a really good port of Shinobi. And if you want to play Shinobi, why not play it on the Sega Master System? And if you have a more preferred port of Shinobi other than the arcade, which as much I would love to buy an arcade machine and drop it in here, it's just not happening. But if you have another port that you think's better than the Sega Master System, drop that down there in the comments and we'll have a talk about that. And I'm sure Ollie, 8-Bit Boy UK, he will join that conversation too. Now the penultimate thing that I'm going to show you here is not a video game, it's a piece of hardware. It's something I picked up for an absolute steal, and it's something that I absolutely don't need and probably will never use. But when I saw this in fantastic condition, the Dreamcast Keyboard, I just had to pick it up. And like I said, I'll probably never use this, despite it being in fantastic condition. It's a great display piece and all. I don't see me ever sitting down and using this. So if there's anyone out there who needs a Dreamcast Keyboard, especially one that's boxed in good condition and complete with all the paperwork, then why don't you drop down into the comments and let me know that you would like that keyboard, and we'll see what we can do. Now next up is a game that we're going to have to shoot straight back to the present day because it's a game that's just been released and I just forgot I had it because I've been sitting playing it for most of this week, and that game is Red Dead Redemption on the PlayStation 4. Now I know what you're thinking, Red Dead Redemption's been out for the PlayStation 3 for a long time, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is being able to play this on a PlayStation 4. It opens it up to so many more people, and this is a game that everyone should play, and as I said, I've been playing this for the last week now, almost solidly, in between playing the Pixel Remasters on the go, and the Pixel Remasters sitting on the couch with Red Dead Redemption, taking John Marston out again. It's been such a blast. It's working like a treat, and you've also got Undead Nightmare on this as well, if you want a bit of that horror zombie action when it comes to your cowboy action games. So Red Dead Redemption, sorry I forgot about it and didn't have any b-roll, but I'm sure you'll appreciate the fact that this lovely boy is in the collection too, and I definitely recommend that you try and get your hands on this. It's not one that I see about a lot, even though it's just brand new out basically in physical form, but if we don't buy physical games when they come out, people will stop making physical games and we're not having that. Now that's all the pickups I've had over the last 6 or 7 weeks or so, and what did you think of them all? Was there any games in there that you really want to talk about? And I've said before and I'll say again, the interaction between you and me is what makes YouTube special. It does for me anyway, so drop down into the comments and talk about any of the games that you've seen today, or even games that you want to recommend to me that weren't here that I'd maybe like because of the stuff that I'm buying. I'm happy to talk about that too. But thank you again for watching as always, and until next time, cheerio.